opportunity to jump on. Okay, A Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Konigsberg in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Konigsberg, Shimon Reuben ben Labush, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nissen Hara Nissen ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg in memory of their dear friend, Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bas Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. The many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, and friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bas Yisroel Dov. A month of learning sponsored by Gary and Marcia Schrager in memory of his father David ben Yosef and his mother Freda bas Hendel, as well as by Dov Bodlander in memory of his father Tzvi ben Yaakov Yitzchak, his mother Bela Devasha bas Harav Dov Bear, his father-in-law Yehuda Tzvi ben David Nachum, and his mother-in-law Alta Chaya bas Avram Yosef. Also Mel and Haran Haller, a month of learning in memory of his father Avraham ben Ze'ev. A week of learning by Judy Iger in memory of her son Yerachmiel ben Aharon, as well as by Judy and Marty Engel in memory of her father Chaim Yosef ben Alta Yaakov. A day of learning, that actually is over now, so that is it. May the neshamas have an aliyah, Kranker Rafia, Velti Yashir, Hashem Ataliah, and the Chol B'nai Israel, good gebenched yar.
Amen.
Okay. Welcome, Harvey. Okay. We're going to get underway in just a moment, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And just a quick review. Remember, we're dealing with the issue of a karpaf, this empty lot. And we're following the example. The question was a limit of 2 beit seah, okay? And back and forth, we saw there were various opinions. What happens if you planted it? Even though it was initially considered for residence, once it was planted, seeded, it was no longer inhabitable, I'll put it that way, and therefore not permitted to carry in it. But if it was trees planted there, okay, that would seem to be a different opinion, that it could be still habitable. Right? Then the question is, well, what if the karpaf is larger than 2 beit seah, and you only planted, let's say, less than 2 beit seah? Things of that nature comes back as well. Okay, so this was what we were looking at in the Gemara, right? On top of Kaf Daled Amud Aleph, right? All right. I'm going to pick up a little bit. Amar Rav Huna Bereda Rav Yoshua. Lo amron ela de lo have beit sa'atayim. Right, so Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, says we're only talking about a situation where it wasn't 2 beit seah. Aval beit sa'atayim asur. Okay, but if it's 2 beit seah, right, if that's the area of the karpaf, okay, or maybe if that's the area that's planted, come on, karabanan, then it's forbidden to carry according to the rabbis. Rabbi Yirmiyah midifte, matnei lekula. And Rav Yirmiyah from Diftei taught this issue from a leniency. In other words, he taught what Rav Huna Bereda Rav Yehoshua was saying. Ha mi'uta, in other words, but if a minority, a smaller section of the 2 beit seah were seeded, okay, shari, then in that whole area, okay, it would be permitted to carry. And if you look at on 24A1 in the notes opposite note number 3, you see a diagram that Art Scroll has given us in that regard, that even though 2 Beit Say are there, since the area is larger, but it's a smaller portion, okay, in theory, he would say that it's permitted to carry within the entire, I'll say, complex. Now, Amar Rav Huna Bered Rav Yoshua. He says as follows, Lo Amran Ela Beit Se'atayim. When he says that it was only 2 Beit Se'ah, okay? Aval Yoter Mi Beit Se'atayim. But if the area seated was greater than 2 Beit Se'ah, Asur, then it would be prohibited. Kiman, according to whom? Rabbi Shimon. It would be prohibited according to the view of Rabbi Shimon. Okay, so let's see what's the situation, right? Rabbi Shimon, remember, permits carrying, okay, because one could go from the karpaf to a chatzer, right? So in that situation, he would permit it. Okay. However, now the Gemara comes back to the Mishnah, right? Since we spoke about it being seated, we're now going to give an examination of the other aspect when it was planted with trees. Nata rubo, okay, when the Mishnah said that it was planted an orchard, let's say, or something like that, harehu kechatzer umutar, says the Mishnah, then it could be considered like a courtyard and would be permitted. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Abimi. So we have another view here. Vehu she'asuyin, as he says, atz tablaot. Okay, atz tablaot means that the trees are arranged in a row.
Rows.
Okay, right. So that's the point. The Rav Nachman Amar afal pi she'ein asuyin itz tablaot, and Rav Nachman disagrees, saying even if the trees are not arranged in rows, okay, that one could still carry there. Why is that the case? Remember, we're saying whether the area is able to be inhabited. Okay? Mar Yehuda, so we have now a little story, right? Mar Yehuda, on 24a2. Mar Yehuda, he says, Ikla lebe Rav Huna, came to Rav Bar Yehuda. Mar Yehuda came to the residence of Rav Yehuda, the son of Yehuda. Chazanhu lehinhu delo avidi itztablaot. And he saw that the trees planted there in this lot, okay, and these karpafs, okay, were not arranged in rows. And they were carrying, okay, inside this area. Amarle, and he said to his host, Lo savar lamar lahad avimi? Doesn't the master hold similar to the view of Avimi? Amarle, he said to him, Ana kirav Nachman sevirele. He says, I hold like Rav Nachman, okay, that it's permitted to carry in this karpaf even if the trees are not arranged in rows. Now, Gemara continues, right, and wants to examine the situation a little bit more. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. So Rav Nachman says in the name of Shmuel, Karpaf yoter mi beit sa'atayim. Okay, we have a lot, right, an empty lot that is larger than 2 Beis Seah. Shalohu kaf ledira, but it wasn't enclosed initially for the purpose of dwelling, right, of residence. Keitzad hu oseh, what does he do if he wants to be able to carry in it on Shabbat, right? Poretz bo pirza, yoter mi eser Okay? He makes a breach in the wall surrounding this area, and the breach has to be more than 10 tfachim, right? 10 amos, I'm sorry, 10 amos wide, right? Vigodro, and then he makes another fence, okay, to close up part of the breach. Uma'amido al-efer umutar, okay? And what does he do? And he makes it less than 10 amos, right? And then it would be permitted to carry within that area. Why? Because he's now made this a petach, right? Ibayalaho. So now the Gemara wants to raise a question about this episode, this method of leniency. Paratz ama, the gadar ama. Let's say that he breached an amma of the wall and then fenced it in. Uparatz amma v'gadra. And then he breached another amma and fenced that in. Ad shehishlimo liyoter me'eser. Until it was more than 10, right? More than, in this case, right? Right? More than 10 amos wide. Mahu, what's the status? Right? What do we say? Amar lahu, he said to him, Lav hainu ditznan. Wasn't this something that we already learned in the Mishnah? Kol kli ba'alei batim, any, in another Mishnah, any utensil, right, that belonged to a homeowner, right? Right? Shi'urim kerimonim, their measure, okay, of, I'm going to say, a destruction, or their measure in that utensil where the hole is the size of a pomegranate, okay, that's going to render the item no longer a utensil, and therefore it loses its tumah. Ubae Chizkiah. Okay, and Chizkiah then comes and asks, Mikev kimotzi zayet ustamo. Okay, let's say that he made a hole the size of an olive, right? And then he sealed it. V'chazar v'nikev kimotzi zayet ustamo. And then he went back and made another hole the size of an olive, and he closed it. Ad shehishlimo lemotze rimon, until the amount, the sizes of the holes were such that they would then be the equivalent of a pomegranate, the size of the holes. Mahu, what's the status? Va'amar le Rav Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan responded, Rebbe, okay, so he responds as follows, right? My teacher, Shinitna Lanu, you taught us at one point, Sandal shenifsaka echat me'aznav, if someone had a sandal and one of the, well, we call it the ears in the Gemara, but one of the flaps that wrap around, okay, so the sole of the sandal is on the bottom of the foot, and there are flaps that wrap around, okay, in which there are laces through that, in which it's tied on to the person's foot, okay? So if one of these flaps break, right, vitikna, and one went ahead and repaired it, tamei midras, it's still possible that it could become tuma from midras, from stepping on something. Say he stepped on the spittle of a, right, of a zav, okay? Nifsaka shniya, if the second flap, ear, okay, of the sandal broke, v'tikna, and he repairs it, tahor, then the sandal itself is tahor, min hamidras. It would be exempt, so to speak, from this tuma of midras, of treading, Aval tameh maga midras. But it could still be tameh because of contact with the midras, with something that had been stepped on, treading. Va'amart Allah, excuse me, and you said on this, Mai shana rishona, the hakaima shnia. Okay, so he asks the question, excuse me, why is it that regards to the first side, the first flap of the sandal, it's tameh midras, the hakaima shnia, but regarding the second one, we say it becomes tahor and it's still good. Shnia nami hakaima rishona. Okay, shouldn't it be that if the second flap of the sandal breaks, right? If that's the case, shouldn't it also become the opposite? Shouldn't it also become intact? And if the first one only broke, it should be good. It should still be valid. That was the question. V'amartvan, and you told us a lot about this. Panim chadashot ba'ulakan. Namely, you gave us an answer that it's a new face, right? In other words, it's a new item. By having to repair both flaps of the sandal, it's as if you've created a new sandal. And therefore, it's like a new utensil, and that's why it is to be considered tahor. Hacha nami, here too. Panim chadashot ba'ulakan. Here too we might say that a new face has come here. That once you have a hole the size of a pomegranate, even though it was made by perforating earlier smaller holes, and now you've repaired them all, maybe it's like a new utensil, right? Kari ale. And what do we call about this then? All right. In other words, this explanation, lit din bar emish. He was so impressed with that explanation. He says that this person it's like he's not human. Ika da amre, or there are those who said, kigon din bar nash, or like he's a fantastic, great person. Okay, for coming up with that kind of explanation. Okay, the Gemara is going to pick up now with another example of a different kind of karpaf. Okay? This is a case for the following. Amar Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana says as follows. Right? Rechava she'achorei habatim. We have let's call it a fenced-in yard, backyard, that's behind the houses, right? Ein metaltalin bo ela ba'arba amot. One cannot carry from the house out into this backyard no more than Dalit Amos, 4 Amos. Va'amar Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman says, Im patach lo petach. Rav Nachman is saying, however, that if he opened an entrance from the house, okay, into the yard, right, mutar letaltel bekulo, then he's permitted to carry throughout the entire backyard. Patach matiro, velo amran ela shepatach. Okay, so what is he saying here? That if he opened it, okay, right, when he says that he opened it, okay, what we're saying, okay, is that he's permitted to carry there, that having opened it renders it possible, okay, to carry. Okay, but that situation, velo amran ela shepatach levasov hukaf, that was only viable if he made that opening and then afterwards closed in the backyard. Okay? Aval hukaf, but if he had earlier closed in the backyard,
So
vasof patach, and afterwards made the opening from the house to the backyard, lo. Okay? That's not the case. Lo patach. It's not as if he considered a valid opening. Okay? Levasof hukaf pshita. So the Gemara says. But to say that he opened and afterwards enclosed, isn't that obvious?
Obvious.
Right? Lo tzricha. No, we needed to say it. The eat be dari. Why? Because we're saying here that there is something there, okay, in the backyard. Okay, Beidari, Art Scroll suggests it's a granary. Okay, I'm going to say that it's more some sort of dwelling. Okay, maybe a shed, maybe something that's viable for habitation, for people's use. Okay, right? Mahu detema. Okay, so what are we saying there? Adata tebedari avde. Okay, that opening was done for the purpose of accessing that base dari, to have access to that shed or that granary or whatever it is. Okay, and so therefore it really is almost an add-on to the house. Okay, a place that's associated with residence. Okay, Kamash Malan comes to teach us that that's the case. Right? So we go on now. Another example. Karpaf yotermi beitz atayim. Again, we get now a lot. Right? Okay. And this time, yotermi beitz atayim. Again, it's more than two beitzea. Shuhukaf ledira v'nitmale mayim. In other words, it was intended for habitation, and it flooded, right? It became full of water, right? Savur Rabbanan, Lamemar, right? The rabbis thought to say, Kizraim Damu, that this would be similar to the situation of having planted it with seeds, Va'asir, and therefore it's no longer habitable, and thus it would be prohibited to carry there. Amar laho Rav Abba, and Rav Abba, others want to say, okay, Avuha, the father, the Rav, Vare, the Rav Masharshia, the brother of Rav Masharshia, Hachi Amrinan Mishmei de Rabba. This is what we say in the name of Rava, Mayim kinataim dami vishari. Okay, that the water flooded area of the Karpaf, okay, particularly, right, if this area, all right, if it's kinataim, okay, it's more like the trees were planted there than seeded. That is what it's compared to, vishari, and therefore it's going to be permitted. In other words, if even though it got flooded, okay, that doesn't preclude the possibility of still being able to use that land for habitation. Okay. Now, on the top of 24b, Kafdalet Amud Beis, we have a memar. Okay. Vahu amar amemar, vahu dechaziem letashmishta. This says a memar, okay, that it depends on the flooding of the Karpaf if it's viable for its normal use. Okay? In other words, that water theoretically might be usable as drinking water. Aval lo chazyan letashmishta. But if water there is not fit for its normal use, lo, then no, we cannot use it. It cannot be, we can't carry it, It's not habitable. Okay? Think of floods, what happened now in Louisiana. Okay? Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi now, right? Says Rav Ashi, Udechazin Latashmishta. And when we say that it's got to be water fit for normal use, Nami lo amran, ela she'ein ba'omko yoter mi beit sa'atayim. That here we're saying, right, that the depth of the water, okay, doesn't cover more than 2 beit seah, right? Okay. Aval im yesh ba'omko yoter mi beit sa'atayim asur. But if the depth of the water is such that it covers more than 2 beit seah, then it is prohibited. V'lav miltehi. Okay.
Rabbi, could this change from time to time? Like you said, like a flood.
Sure. Think of Babylonia. Remember, you've got 2 large rivers. So it's possible that with rain at certain parts of the year, the rivers would flood, and that would cause flooding, particularly in lowlands. Right? So the
When the flooding disappears.
What?
If the flooding
right.
drains off, then it becomes useful again, or allowed to be used?
Right. Could be usable again, right. Okay. So the Gemara challenges this, just as you just did, Ted. See?
How do you like
the
that?
Lav miltehi. But that's not something. In other words, that's not a viable argument, the Gemara says. Mide dahava achraya tapiri. Okay? Because maybe we're talking about, okay, that there was produce already there in that karpaf. Okay? So the water is not necessarily going to destroy its use, okay, per se. So the Gemara continues now with another example of another karpaf. Hahi rechava dahave bepum nahara. Okay, here we get more to what we were talking about. There was a certain backyard, all right, and what happened? And it opened, right? Dahave bepum nahara. It opened on one side, okay, in the city of Pum Nahara, right? Dechad gisa hava patich lamata. Okay, that one side it opened towards the town. Vechad gisa hava patich l'shvil shel kramim. And on the other side, it opened to a pathway that led through vineyards. Ushvil shel kramim havasalik leguda de nahara. And this pathway through the vineyards, actually, then what did it do? Okay, it led down, okay, it went down to the bank of the river. Okay, with a good reason why they called the town Pum Nahara, right? Riverbank. Okay, don't we have something like that in New Jersey, right? Riverside or all these things? Okay. Okay, so what happens? Amar Abaye, Hechina Avid. What do we do in that case? Okay, you've got this, okay, so you've got this lot. On one side, it opens to a real Rishus Harabim, because that's where the town is. On the other side of the Karpaf is another petach, another opening, and that leads down to a pathway down to the river. Okay? So you've got, what I'm going to say for the moment, 3 areas. All the way on one side, you've got the Rishus Harabim, that's part of the town. Okay? Then next to that, you've got the Karpaf. Then next to that, you've got this pathway leading down to the river. Okay? So we have 2, what I'll call openings into the walls of the Karpaf. One that goes from the Rishus Harabim of the town into the Karpov, and another opening, another breach that goes from the Karpov to the pathway down to the river. Okay, everybody with me?
Yeah.
Okay, so Abai asks, if we want to make the Karpov usable for carrying on Shabbat, okay, what do? Right? After all, theoretically at least, we could say people from the town would want to go through the Karpov to get to the pathway to get water from the river, right? So the Gemara is going to try to respond now with a couple of questions and then see what we can do, right? So the Gemara says, La'avid le mechitza aguda de nahara. Shall we set up a partition, okay, a wall, so to speak, on the bank of the river, right? Eino sin mechitza al gabe mechitza. But the rabbis basically have said that we don't put a partition on top of another partition. Why? Because the river bank acts like a natural partition. So we don't need one on top of the other. Okay? V'la'avid le'tzurat ha'petach apuma deshvil shel kramim. Shall we then do a tzuras ha'pesach on the opening between the Karpov and the pathway through the vineyards? Right? Atu gamle, shadayanle. Okay, maybe somebody's going to come through with a camel and he's going to knock down the tzuras ha'pesach. Okay, so that's another problem. Ela amar Abaye. Okay, li'avid lechi apitcha the shvil shel kramim. So Abaye is suggesting maybe we should simply put a lechi on the opening that goes from the Karpov into the pathway of the vineyards, and therefore we might be able to argue the migo de mahenya l'shvil shel kramin mahani nami l'rechava, that since it now permits carrying along the pathway of the vineyards, it also is going to permit it in carrying in this back lot, okay? This backyard, the enclosed back lot. Now, Amar le Rava, since Rava responds to him, to Abaye, Yomru, the people will say, Lechi mo'il l'shvil shel kramim da'alma. Maybe people will incorrectly learn and assume, okay, that this lechi is sufficient enough of a symbol of a partition or a petition for this pathway of the vineyards in general, right? El Amar Rava, but Rava says as follows: Avdinan le lechi lepitcha demata. Rava says, let's make it a lechi on the entranceway going from the town, from the Rishus Harabim of the town into the Rechava, into the back lot, right? Demigo de mahani le lechi lamata. We can say, since we're now permitting this lechi to go from the Rishus Harabim, the town, okay, into the back lot, mahani nami the Rechava, therefore it permits us to carry into the back lot as well. Okay, seems right. Hilkach tiltule b'mata gufa shari, and then this way, carrying from the mabui of the town into the Rechava is permitted. However, the Gemara continues tiltule berechava gufa shari. Also, it would seem to imply then that carrying in this back lot itself is also going to be permitted. But the Gemara now continues. Mimata l'rechava, from the town to the back lot. Umirechava lemata, pligi ba Rav Acha v'Ravina. There was an argument between Rav Acha and Ravina, going back and forth between the back lot to the town and the town to the back lot. Okay? Chad asar, the chad shari. One prohibited and one permitted. We're going to just go on a little bit more. Okay? Onto the top of Kaf Hey a little bit. Man deshari, the one who permitted it, okay, the ha leka diorim. Okay, why? He says because there were no residents in the back lot. All right, and since it's no residents, okay, we can say, therefore, right, that it's not a problem. Okay, right? It should be accessible and regardless. Oman da asa, and one who prohibited zimnin dahave bad yurim. Why is it concerned that at some time that could have residents, va'ate letutule, and they would wind up continuing to carry there in that back lot, and that would be then problematic. Okay, so that's where we're going to stop, because the next piece gives again another example of a different karpaf or rechava, and that's where we'll pick up tomorrow. Okay, so here we're going to come back again to this issue of the size, all right, of the area. Okay, so everybody stay well. I know it's a long Amud tomorrow, but we should be able to go through it pretty smoothly. Okay, and the second Amud, second part is not long. All right, everybody, take care and
Thank
stay
you.
well.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Rabbi.
Have a good day. Hi, Harvey. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Have a good one.
All righty.
Morning, Ted.
Morning. Good morning. Day is starting.
Yeah. So far, so good.
Going?
Where do you want to go?
Where do you have to go? Elizabeth?
I don't think so. Just want to go look, see anyway, in case we change our minds about getting one of those things.
Well, no,
So we'll know where to go.
I'll go to Walmart. I have to get muffins.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say Walmart first.
What?
I say go to Walmart first.
I'm going to get my muffins. My plants. There's 2 of them done. And we'll go to the dollar store and get no, I get it. Where do I get Porsche puzzle?
Well, let's go to Publix and look. I somehow think it's Publix.
I have to wait till we go to Publix. So have enough food. Where do we go?
Oh, gotta go to the bathroom first.
Hello, Bear.
I gotta take a shit, okay? Won't be that long. Yeah. I can't hear you. What?
Nothing working.
Okay.
of the, I know.
Good.
And since I do know about these, bills you got, you never said a word about them.
I'm still reading about it. It's a whole diet thing too.
That you had time to do,
I didn't. I said it's still reading. I didn't know. I didn't.
but you ordered them without knowing. That's pretty dumb. Pretty dumb.
No,
Anyway, you should practice your davening, that you have to practice. Be embarrassed. Do it louder, sharper. The other guy is much louder than you when he davens. We bought command, right?
yeah, we have. For those two, we have enough for sure.
So I'm saying, didn't we buy it?
I said we have some.
Yeah.
But I said enough to cover those two for sure.
Oh, it's not going on. What's going on here? What's going on here?